Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to talk a little bit of NBA basketball action. Pretty interesting Monday here. We got 8 games on the slate. The one problem we have is that we got 6 of these 8 games that are at least 3 possessions or more on the spread. 8 points or better on 6 of the 8 games. The only 2 close ones are Miami and Cleveland, which is only really close because Miami's got a couple injuries, and even that is a 6-point spread at the moment. And then the Orlando-Brooklyn game is, the one game that, kind of grades out as one that should be pretty close and could go either way back and forth. I think the total right now is somewhere around 3 in that game. So we got a couple big totals as well. We got a couple 240 totals, a couple 230 totals, a couple in the high 220s as well. So it is a very interesting slate, although I got to be honest, not a lot of stuff that really jumped out to me, when I first looked at it. But that's why I bring in my experts to see if they saw something that I didn't. We'll start up top with my man, Frank Brank. Frank, how's it going here Monday?
Good. It's been a good few weeks for NBA for me. Post pre All-Star, I had a little run, and then post All-Star, I've been on a little run, a little bit unlucky even on my losses, but that's okay. I'm about 16 units so far, so pretty close to probably one of my better NBA seasons. I mean, for those who follow along the site, pretty low volume overall for NBA. The market's very tight. So if you could get like plus 20 in a season, that's pretty good. So I'm pretty close there. So if we can keep on a little run here, maybe we can finish with one of my better NBA seasons ever.
Yeah, and that'll be good. And I also saw that you started putting up some of your baseball stuff as well. I saw some of your pitcher rankings that went up over at EliteSportsBetting.com. So if anybody's starting to get into their baseball mindset as well. I know Frank had some stuff going up there. MLB Dream is starting to do his preseason stuff, which was very profitable last year. So make sure you guys get over there and check it out. But we do still have a lot of basketball going on as well, whether it's NBA or college basketball. That's why I got my other expert here, my man Fried Egg, Paulie. So what's going on with you, Paulie? How was this weekend for you?
Nothing much. No, it was a pretty good weekend. Up a little bit in NBA, slight edge on college basketball. So hoping to carry that into this week.
Yeah, and we got to, we're going to have a lot of college basketball coming up right now. We got about a month left in the NBA season. And I'm not going to lie to you guys because this happens every year. Like, the last month of the NBA season turns into a little bit of a shit show. You're going to start having a lot more guys sitting out because their teams are out of it. You're going to have a lot more guys sitting out because their teams aren't out of it, and they just want to try to get rest for some of these guys. So, there's a lot more late news that pops out in NBA at this time of year, a lot more guys sitting out. Some guys who haven't gotten much time this year, they start giving them time to see what they have and if, they're going to be a part of teams' futures. But NCAA action is going to be swinging into full effect. We got March Madness coming up very soon, considering we're at the last week of February. I know guys like Paulie and, and Frank and Tommy and, a lot of the other guys over at the site are going to be very heavily invested in the NCAA tournament. So, again, make sure you guys get over to EliteSportsBetting.com. Check that stuff out because that's going to be one of the big money makers, at least for the next month. There's a lot less volatility in the college game over the next month than there is in the NBA game. So we'll probably have a lot more plays coming there. But you guys are here to listen to us talk about NBA today. So let's get into it. We got 8 games on the slate. I know you guys probably don't have too many plays here today. Like I said, the spreads are pretty big. The totals are pretty big as well. Maybe there are a couple edges, so we'll see if we can find them. First game is Miami against Cleveland. Miami is 6-point favorite here, total of 223. Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero are both going to be out for the Miami side in this game, which is obviously going to affect things. Miami being on the road, I think, is another reason why. Cleveland has just been an absolute shit show, though, this whole year. So, anything you're looking at here, we'll start with you, Frank. Miami, Cleveland?
Yeah, Butler comes back. Butler's out and Love's coming back. So I thought I would have maybe had something here considering, we can get some plays when some key guys are out. But total 222, my line's at 6.3. So really just nothing here for me. And I personally don't mind not betting any Cleveland games in the near future anyway. So, nothing here for me.
Yeah, Paulie, anything for you on this one?
There might be a play in the first quarter and first half for Miami here. Miami's been outstanding in those 2 segments this year, and Cleveland's been near the bottom of the NBA. I'm just waiting. Most books don't really have the quarters or halves yet up for this game, so I'm waiting to see what the exact number the book's going to give us before possibly firing on that.
All right, so what would you be looking at here?
I just got to see the number in relation to in relation to what the actual spread is to see how much value there is, and to see whether we want to go a quarter or a half or possibly even do the full game spread to see what's more valuable.
All right, so when you're looking at something like this, like what, let's say like the total I think right now is 223 for the game, right? So would you be looking at, taking like an under on the half if it's like 114, 115?
Well, no, I'm talking 100. I'm talking taking the side as in taking Miami here.
Okay.
I'm not looking at the total here. I just want to see what the quarter and the halves are. I haven't seen them out on any of the books yet. So once they're released, I'll be able to figure out if we're gonna have an edge or not. And a difference of a half a point or a point can be a difference in a play and not play, especially on a quarter, because the time horizon of only 12 minutes is, a point can be a big difference.
All right, so I mean, we have what, like a 5.5, 6 point spread on this game, depending on where you're looking at it. So if you were looking at something for like the first quarter, you'd probably be looking for what, like a Miami -1 or. For the
and the thing with the spread between 5 and 6, you can see a quarter line come out as a 1, and you can see it also come out as a 2. And if it's at a 2, 2.5, probably not a play. If it's sitting there at 1 or 1.5, most likely going to be a play on that.
All right, so I mean, nothing on the pre-flop here, but maybe we will have something once those numbers come out a little bit later. So, just keep that in mind, see where it comes. And again, if you want to see if Paulie has something down on it, make sure you get over to the EliteSportsBetting.com, sign up for the VIP package, and you'll get all his plays as soon as they pop. And make sure you guys, if you have Twitter, make sure you follow in Elite Alerts as well, because anytime one of us puts a play into the package, you'll get an update on Elite Alerts, and you can go check it out and make sure you get your money down before the lines start moving, so you can get it down right when we're putting our money down. All right, so the next game we got here, we got the Milwaukee Bucks going up against the Washington Wizards. 12.5 point favorite by Milwaukee here, even on the road. Huge total, 240.5 in this game. Brook Lopez is going to be out here for Milwaukee, but it looks like the rest of the guys are going to be pretty healthy. Looks like even the Washington side, they're getting some of these big guys back, so they're going to have pretty much all their big guys in there. Again, big spread here, 12.5 points on the road, huge total at 240. Anything you guys are looking at? We'll start with you, Paulie.
Yeah, and this is kind of my I didn't say a trend bet, but this is my new version of the Bulls under is the Wizards first half over.
Okay.
So Wizards first half over is hitting at about 70% for the year. And we've seen it happen over the last month. Their pace in the first half, particularly in the second quarter, has been absolutely insane. From about the 3-minute mark of the first quarter until the end of the first half, it has been absolutely insane. We saw it the other day when they played the Bulls yesterday. They scored, I think, line was 117. They scored like 131 in the first half. The game before that went over as well by I think like 5 or 6 in the first half. There's just absolutely no defense being played, and Washington is just going to the court and just chucking threes. And you got a team in Milwaukee who has no problem doing the exact same thing. So this is one where I think it's going to go over, and then probably maybe it might slow down a bit in the second half when it's a little bit of a blowout. So I'd rather get my overaction into the first half.
Yeah, and it actually plays into what Milwaukee's biggest weakness is on defense. They do give up a lot of open threes. So if Washington's hitting them, we could see a monster first half score come up here.
It's either layups or threes, and that's what both teams are going to do. So if it's well.
All right, Frank, anything for you on this one?
I like the over as well. So for the game, this is probably the highest total I've seen come out of my model so far this year. Brook Lopez and Korver being out. Washington's also on the back-to-back, which I've talked about before with you tend to see like about a 1 point reduction offensively, but you see about a 3 point reduction defensively. So you give up, about 3 points more on defense throughout the game when you're on a back-to-back. The only thing I'm hesitant about, and it's just because I got burnt on Dallas on Saturday, is Washington's on the back-to-back. And if they rest guys, then my over's cooked. So I played a big over in Dallas on Saturday. The line went my way, and then it crashed back down when Porzingis and Luka were out. So I'm gonna like the over here pretty much no matter what. So I'm just gonna wait to make sure that Washington's not resting, and then just play it anyway. So I might lose a point or so, but like I said, this is probably the highest total I've seen come out of my model yet. Milwaukee, like Paulie said, in Washington, both two of the fastest teams in the NBA. Both of them honestly pretty decent offensively. So we're just going to see a lot of shots. And, if they go in, at an average rate, they're going to go over this total, I think.
All right, so a lot of points being expected here, and our guys are looking to bet on that. And I'll tell you what, for the DFS side of thing, you will see a few names in, on both teams, more on the Milwaukee side, but a few names on both teams end up in my write-up today as well. So this should be a fun game to watch, and hopefully a ton of points because that'll help us win these bets here. So let's look at the next game here. We got the Atlanta Hawks going up against Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers currently favored by 8, total 228.5. Philly does have some injury concerns, though. They are without Ben Simmons, and they may also be without Tobias Harris, who's listed as doubtful. It looks like both of those guys are going to sit here. So, Frank, what are you looking at in this game, and, how much could those guys affect it if they're out?
Well, Simmons is tough because he certainly handles the ball. That being said, he's not very good offensively, and he's pretty good defensively. So I would say that the pace difference probably isn't enough on the step down to make up for the difference. So that the total, I think, should be a little bit higher. Seeing, like you said, some 228.5s out there. I've got it at 231 and lined at 7.5. So no play on the side, but I do have an over lean here. I think probably gets a little bit misinterpreted with Simmons being out, that the total should be lower, but considering his defensive prowess and his lack of offensive ability, the guys on the bench getting more minutes probably have a little bit better chance to score, and the pace difference isn't going to change that much. So I do like the over here at 228.5.
All right, I can get on board with that because Atlanta is a team that can put up some points, and they're also a team that can give up a lot of points as well. So
I've wrote Atlanta overs for a while. They seem to keep winning. It's like they just don't defend, and they shoot a lot of threes, and Trey goes a little bit crazy, and so I'm probably going to stay on these overs as long as I keep getting value here.
Yep, I like that. Paulie, anything for you in this one, Atlanta, Philly?
Yeah, I had my biggest pregame edge of the day, which is Atlanta here on the spread. Was able to get it at +8, still sitting at +8 right now in the market. Also took a stab on the money line at +270. Numbers just way too high for me. And Rob, aka MLB model alcoholic, whatever you would like to call him nowadays, is also on this play. That was one of his first NBA plays he's had in a couple weeks, and he's got an over unit play for him. He's got it at 1.5 units as well. So we're both matching up there. I think this game should be closer to 4, and we're getting 8. You have, arguably two of the top 3 players on Philly most likely out here, and I just don't see why they're favored by this much when the Atlanta Hawks, over the last couple weeks, even before, the All-Star break, they're kind of back mostly healthy, playing well. You got, Trae Young firing. I just don't get this number right now.
Yeah, I mean, even a guy like Cam Reddish is starting to step up and, and be a pretty good player for them as well. DeAndre Hunter, they got Dwayne Dedmon in there now at center, so they got some size. John Collins went absolutely nuts the other day against Dallas. I think he had 37 or 30 and 17 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of talent on this Atlanta team. They're young, they're inconsistent sometimes, but they do tend to play an exciting brand of up-tempo basketball. So I'm on board with that. I like that. And also hearing that Rob has 1.5 units on it, this is a guy who never really goes over 1 unit. So I have 1.5 on it.
I think he's had 1 or 2 NBA plays the last 2 or 3 weeks total. So whenever you have to play it happens to match up with what I put overnight, it's usually a good sign when you see multiple people on the same play.
Yeah, so I'm putting a double check mark next to this one so I can go make sure I bet this when we're done here. All right, so next game up for us here, we got Orlando and Brooklyn, one of the few close games or expected close games here today. Seeing 2.5 was the open. I'm actually seeing it up at 3 and 3.5 now with Brooklyn being favored. Total hasn't really moved, 211, 211.5 all around there. Paulie, we'll start with you on this one. Anything on Orlando and Brooklyn?
No play for me in this game, Benny.
All right, Frank, anything for you on this one?
Yeah, nothing here either. Not that I would rush to bet these teams anyway, but -2.5 and 211.5. So yeah, nothing that really interests me here. Like I said, I don't really want to bet either of these teams anyway. So
yeah, no, and you know what? Even from the daily fantasy side, I mean, you would think Orlando would get a big boost going up against Brooklyn, but really they're projected for about their normal points, even though they're getting a little bit of a pace bump there. And Orlando being such a good defensive team, it's not really the time to kind of go crazy on the Brooklyn side of this game either. So I'm not really looking at this game all that much either. It's one of the lower totals on a day that has a whole bunch of 230, 220 something, 240 even totals. I think this is the lowest total by a wide margin too. 211 on this game. And I think everything else is at least 223 or above.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking fantasy, this is definitely not the spot you want to be.
No injuries really or anything like that. It's like, what are you chasing here?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's really nothing that's going to change from these two teams. You're going to get what you normally get from them, and probably a game we can stay away from. So let's move on and talk about another one here. Got the New York Knicks taking on the Houston Rockets down in Houston. I'm seeing this total even moving up. I think it's at 14.5 right now, if I'm not mistaken. The total went from 220. Actually, the total's come down. The spread went up to 14.5. The total started at 230. 229, 228.5 in some spots. So not a ton of movement, but at least a little something there. Frank, we'll start with you on this one. New York, Houston, anything?
Yeah, the reason for those moves, both Knicks point guards are questionable. So that's obviously, when the two ball handlers are out, it's going to bring the total down, and the spread is going to go up for Houston here. I have it lined at 15, so I agree with the spread, and I wouldn't be playing on either end of that anyway, just because these games that are 20-point differences at some point, they tend to get messy, and it's pretty unpredictable. But I think I am going to like the under regardless. 229.5, 229 floating out there. I have it at 227. I'm just kind of waiting to see who plays, because I could see that value getting taken away if Peyton gets rolled in, or one or both get rolled in. Then we're going to see a big change in pace and a big change in team kind of team makeup for the Knicks. So I have been playing a little bit of Houston unders, which is kind of interesting to me because I had been playing so many overs with them, but it has looked like they've slowed down. They went from being the second fastest team in the NBA to the 10th fastest team in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. That's why I've got a small underplay there with the Knicks point guards being questionable as well.
All right, makes a little bit of sense there. Paulie, anything that you're looking at in this one?
Nothing for me in this game, Benny.
Yeah, I'm probably staying away from it too. I mean, Frank mentioned when you have these totals that are 14, 15 points, there's a good chance Houston does win this game by a big number, but 12 to 18, it's going to be scrubs at the end of the game. Houston's going to not be pushing it to score, and New York could wind up hitting a three, and the next thing you know, it's a 14-point game, and you wind up losing your bet. This is just one of those ones that I stay away from. I mean, if you want to throw the money line in on something, by all means, but you're not even getting enough value to really juice up any parlays or something with that. So this is a game that I'm just willing to kind of stay away from.
From a DFS side, how do you handle, if you want to play some Houston guys, how do you handle that? Do you avoid that kind of situation, or do you think that the 3/4 would be kind of enough there? Or what do you do?
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually writing up my cash game article, at least the intro before we come on, and I'll go fill in the rest of it, after we do the show here. And that's basically what I talked about in the intro, is that when you have these games that are potential blowouts, what you really want to do is stay away from the team that's going to get blown out, or has the potential to get blown out. You don't want to be playing, you probably don't want to be playing like a Julius Randle here today, even though his projections seem pretty good, because if the Knicks do wind up getting blown out, that means that they didn't put up a lot of points, and even the best players on their team didn't have it. But on the other side, I have no problem with it. I mean, there are games where Giannis played 28 minutes and put up 60-something fantasy points. Do I want to play those guys in a tournament? Probably not, because you're not getting the ceiling game out of them. But again, I'm writing up the cash game article, and if a team's going to be up 20 points at the end of the third quarter, that means that they went out there and put up some big numbers already. So the guys who were the main pieces still probably had big games. So a guy like Harden or Westbrook, I think you could play here. But this is definitely not a spot where I would play both of them. You're playing one or the other, assuming one guy has that big game that puts them up 20.
Right.
So for me, I'm actually leaning Harden a little bit here today. He's not in my cash game lineup at the moment here, but he was one of those guys that made the final cut. I actually wound up paying up for Giannis in a similar situation in a game that's a blowout, because without Brook Lopez, I feel maybe he gets a couple extra minutes at the very least. He could put up a big number in 3/4 anyway. And like I said, for cash games, if he gives me 60 in 3/4, I'm fine with that. That's still basically above average. I just don't think in tournaments you want to expect a 70-point game out of these guys when they're in a game with a 12, 14-point spread, because they are likely to play 28 to 30 minutes as opposed to 34, 35, 38, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way I look at it, at least. So let's look at the next game we have here. We got Minnesota and Dallas. Dallas, another big total here. Dallas is a 14-point favorite. The total it opened at 236. I'm actually seeing it higher in spots here, 237 and a half, 238 and a half. Even at, where the hell is that? Stations 239 and a half as well. Anything you guys are looking at here in this Minnesota Dallas game? Oh, and for Minnesota, obviously, Karl Anthony Towns is out, which is a pretty big deal for them. So I want to mention that as well.
Yeah, and I think Russell's back.
Mhm.
Luka back, obviously. Brunson out, and is it Cauley Stein questionable?
Cauley Stein's questionable. Yeah, they don't know if he's going to play or not.
Yeah, so the big one being Russell there. You know, I've been kind of playing some Dallas over as well. I talked about how I played on Saturday and then got screwed on that. So Dallas has picked up. They went from the 22nd fast team in the NBA to the 12th second fast team in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. So they've really picked up, and they're hard to assess anyway because with Luka being in and out so much, you know, it's hard to tell. But with Russell being back, he's one of the faster and more influential people to a point spread in the NBA because he's not very good defensively. He's pretty good offensively, and his pace stats are pretty remarkable considering the on-off stuff. So he had played a lot of Minnesota unders when he was out, and now that he's back, I think we're going to play some overs. So this number's been jostling around from 238 to 239, it seems. I have it at 239 and a half. So I would play the over here if you can get it 238 or 238 and a half.
Okay, so a little bit of an overaction here. Paulie, anything for you on this game, Minnesota-Dallas?
Yeah, the only play for me would be Dallas first half spread. Dallas has been playing really, really well in the first half, particularly the second quarter, and then kind of giving it back in the second half. I mean, we even saw it over the last couple of weeks, even before All-Star break, where they would just come out on fire in the first half. And Minnesota, with kind of their revamped team, with Cat also out, has a propensity to kind of get behind the 8 ball a little bit in the first half, and then kind of rally towards the end. So I'll be looking to see what the first half line for Dallas is. That'll most likely be a play for me.
What number would you be looking at? Like if you see it at a certain number, what do you kind of think you're looking for here?
Yeah, my guess is we're going to see somewhere where we go with the full spread of 14. We're probably going to see somewhere around 7.5, 8 probably is the first half. And I'd be playing it at those numbers.
Okay, so 7.5, 8. That's around where Paulie's looking. And again, if you want to see if he puts a play in, make sure you get over to EliteSportsBetting.com and you'll be able to check all his plays out for today. So the next game is actually the third lowest spread on the day, and it's still a 7.5-point favorite by the Utah Jazz here over the Phoenix Suns. 223.5 is the total here. Interesting enough, Phoenix is getting healthy here. I mean, they have played games recently without Ricky Rubio, Dario Saric, DeAndre Ayton, and Aaron Baines. Looks like all of those guys are at least slated to be able to play today. Not that it really matters because Utah is still favored by 7.5, 8 points. 223 total in this one. Paulie, we'll start with you. Anything you're looking at here, Phoenix and Utah?
No play for me in this game, Benny.
All right, Frank, anything you're looking at here?
No, but it is funny. I was expecting because I've told you over the last few years, even last year and this year, maybe a year before, my models really liked Utah. I like their efficiency stats, and I was kind of expecting to see a bigger number here when I looked at this game. And then, like you said, with all the Suns getting healthy, I checked my rankings, and I've got the Suns actually as dead middle league average team in the NBA right now from an efficiency standpoint. So the healthiness, of them coming back, I've got the game line at 7.5 and 223.5, so pretty much bang on with that spread of 8. So I was expecting them to have a play on Utah here at the number just upon looking at it, but nothing here for me.
Yeah, and I mean the 7.5 and 223. That's basically what Vegas opened it at this game. And like I said, it's both of them have moved like within a half a point or so. So not a lot of an edge there for you to kind of get on top of. Also for DFS, not really the greatest game overall with Utah and Phoenix here. I never like playing guys against Utah, even though it's not as bad as it has been in years past. And basically Utah, the way that they are, the way that those guys are priced, just doesn't really seem to be anything standing out there with everybody healthy. So always a problem when everybody's healthy. There's really no additional boost to anybody. So it's really kind of a dead game. All right, so let's see. The last game we got here, we got Memphis and the LA Clippers. Clippers currently favored by 9.5. 234.5 is the total here. Couple questionable guys on the Clippers side that could change that, though. Paul George and Patrick Beverley both listed as questionable. I don't know how much that's really going to affect anything here, but I did want to mention it. We don't know if those guys are going to play or not, so I don't want to go ahead and jump the gun there. But, Frank, we'll start with you in this one. Memphis, LA Clippers, anything you see?
Yeah, so if I put JJ out, Paul George out, and Beverly out, I'm getting the line at like 8.5. So it's maybe looking like, one of those guys might play, maybe. Or I'm sorry, 7.5. 7.5. And I've got the game lined at 235.5. Yeah, 235.5. So, I'm going to have to adjust some pace stats based on whether Beverly's in or out, whether Paul George's in or out, just on a, player level. If I take all those guys out at 7.5, I would expect that if Paul George is in, that number's probably going to go up from 9.5 to maybe 10.5, 11. If Beverly's in, that's probably about right. The total might go up a little bit when or if either of those guys are put in. So, yeah, I'm not going to play anything just because of the obvious here, but it is looking like maybe they're sort of middling it, expecting maybe one of those guys to play.
So let me ask you guys both a question here. We'll start with you, Frank, and then Paulie will lead this into you, giving your thoughts on this game as well. So they just picked up Reggie Jackson in the last week, right? And Reggie Jackson got the start the other day when Beverly was out, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, obviously it's only like one game. I think he only played one game so far in a Clippers uniform. Maybe it's two. I might be missing that. But how do you account for something like that when you're looking at your numbers? Because you really don't have a lot of data on what's going to happen there. But like you mentioned, Beverly would normally be a guy who you would click the pace down a little bit with if he was out. But with Reggie Jackson in there and now filling in the minutes, how much of does that affect how much you take it down when you're doing the analysis for it?
I would say that with the Clippers that with having Paul George out, that's a whole different animal, right? But I would say with the Clippers having a lot of guys, like if George is in, Leonard's in, and now Reggie Jackson's in, and just say Beverly's the only one out. Even Lou Williams handles the ball a lot. It's hard for me to say that the pace would be drastically different than having Beverly in, just because Jackson's, I mean, he's not really like a guy that has a lot of – it's not like he's a super pace guy. I mean, he may be, but, like, it's not like Beverly isn't, right? Like,
there's not much of a difference between them is the thing. Yeah.
Right. The main difference is that Jackson is about the same offensively as Beverly, but Beverly gets probably like a 2 or 3 point boost on defense compared to Reggie Jackson over 100 possessions, right?
Right.
So that's where the difference would come in. I think the total would be potentially less with Beverly in, but I don't really see much of a difference just because, one, it's hard to predict. Like you said, we don't really have a big sample of like, oh, what does Reggie Jackson specifically do on the Clippers? But if Steph Curry was going there, then we would know that the pace would be a lot different. But Reggie Jackson isn't even a pace guy, like that significant of a pace guy. And like I said, with all the other ball handlers on this team, it's really not that much of a difference to me. Maybe a little bit different with the under, like I said, if Beverly's in, but you're maybe talking like half point, something like that.
Paulie, would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, and in terms of like the movement with like a player like Beverly versus Reggie Jackson, there's not going to be that big of a move for me there. It'd be bigger if it would be I'm going to say a more important player, but like you're talking about like George playing in or out, you're going to see more movement in the spread there and or total for me. So a lot of times you just got to make your best guess in terms of what the lineup's going to be and go from there. I tend to play more sides than over-unders, so it's a little bit easier to predict. A value of a player being out versus, an over-under, you may have to, consider multiple variables going in terms of like the pace and stuff like that. Like example, like Beverly's good on defense, not as great on offense, and figure out like what, how is Reggie Jackson in comparison to him is a little bit easier to look at on the spread side than on the total side.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Are you so give your thoughts. Anything on this Memphis LA game, or are you kind of staying away from it?
Nothing for me in this game. This is a stay away from me until unless something pops up live.
All right,
And
so
just for completeness here, like if I look at the Clippers on the season, they're 13.7 seconds per offensive possession.
Mhm.
Last game they were like 13.3. The game before that they were like 13.7. So not not a difference in which I would trust that there's a big, large, difference. Plus, just in NBA, for example, the fastest teams are running at like 13-1, 13-0. Maybe every now and again you'll see in small samples teams get to like 12-8, 12-9. But so it's hard to just like be like, oh, well, he's gonna go faster than this, right? So the only thing we could expect that maybe that it would slow down, but it hasn't slowed down with him in there at all. It's been pretty much the same.
So like you said, if anything, the only difference you're really looking at is the the defensive possession kind
Efficiency,
of
right.
Yeah, because Beverly being such a good defensive player there. And Reggie Jackson probably even below league average, I would assume, in defense. I haven't looked at his.
Oh yeah, like a point and a half, and then obviously it's hard to say like what he's gonna be, but from what we would expect from a math perspective, he's like a little over a point on the below average side, and then Beverly is like a point and a half to the good, right? Like so, which is pretty remarkable for a point guard. I mean, it's really hard to be like more than a point, 2 points
Mhm.
for a point guard just because of the rebounding and all that stuff, and they give up shots to other good point guards and things like that. So generally, you don't see too many point guards that are going to be better than Beverly from the defensive side.
All right, so last thing I want to do before we hop off here, give me your best bet of the day. If you're a small better and you can only make one bet, you got, I don't know, 25, $50 in your account, and you just want to get a little bit of action here. Where would you put it on? Either one of you could start. I don't care. Whoever wants to go first there.
I'll say the Bucks over, but I'm gonna wait to make sure Washington isn't resting like Beal or somebody important first.
Mhm.
Yep,
Okay.
and along the same lines, I'll be waiting as well. Will be Washington Milwaukee first half over would be my biggest edge of the day.
All right, so let's hope that there's a ton of points that get scored in that Milwaukee-Washington game, which between those two teams, I don't think is something we really got to worry too much about. Although that is a pretty big
Depends if
total.
those 3-pointers go down, man. If the 3-pointers go down at even just an average rate, this game will be at almost 250, maybe over 250.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and it's hard for Vegas to set a line high enough when you have two high-paced, volatile teams with threes and layups. It's just hard to put a number out there that's high enough to capture the upside of those teams. You could have them, score an 80-point first quarter and just blow the roof out, and final score could be 150 to 125, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, basically what we need is Washington to hit some of those shots and kind of keep it a little bit closer here. Because if Washington's hitting those shots and keeping it close, this game could get very, very high scoring. Like you said, like I wouldn't be shocked if we saw 250, 270 points out of this in total.
The
I
other
was like here that the blowout would like probably hurt us, right? Like if teams kind of I mean,
if it stays under 20, it's good. Because even like yesterday in the Washington game, Washington was behind 15-10 to the Bulls. They just kept jacking threes. So the other thing to look at is maybe some player props on number of threes made in this game. You might be able to get some juicy numbers there possibly.
Yeah, because I'm gonna be nervous that if it gets to 30 at half, I'm not saying it will. We shouldn't expect it to, but if it were, we shouldn't be that surprised considering the Bucks are the best team. Arguably,
one of the bets I was looking at was to see what the first half team total for the Bucks was going to be. Because obviously, like the first half over, I'm pretty sure that the Bucks aren't going to be losing at halftime. Yeah, the first half team total is probably a pretty solid play if they get the first half goes over.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I tend to do the full games just because it weeds out a little bit of the variance. But with a game like this, it's a bit tough because, like you said, if they're up 30 at half, Giannis and these guys that have had some injury problems, right? They may not play very much. It's not like the Bucks are in need to play them or in any concern that they might lose a spot even if they blew a 25-point lead or something, right?
And it being on a back-to-back of Washington, who knows what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I kind of like sticking with the first half here because I have a feeling that the second half could wind up you know, we could get Washington guys sitting because if it's not a game and they just had a back-to-back, they could be, you know, we could get a lot of Troy Brown and Shabazz Napier third and fourth quarter chucking going on here, and you know, Bradley Beal kind of sitting on the bench watching it, which is a little bit of a concern that I have. But yeah, so that wraps it up for today. We went through all 8 of the NBA games. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. These guys are going to come back with the Up and Down podcast, breaking down PGA. What's the PGA event this week?
It's the Honda Classic in Florida. It's got a pretty good field.
All right, pretty good view.
Pretty good field.
Oh, pretty good field. I think you said pretty good view. I was like, oh, where is it? Hawaii or something?
Sure, there are good views too.
Yeah. No, it's always fun. I mean, I've never had a bad day sitting out there playing golf, and I'm not even very good at it. So, you know, the views are always nice there. But for Frank and for Paulie, this is Benny signing off for another episode of The Opening Line at EliteSportsBetting.com.